And Rob, I don't know if you would like to just maybe we'll start out. Maybe if you could describe the air mobility landscape and how you segment it. I think we have people that one of the common questions we got was what's air mobility or sustainable air mobility, and so just maybe your thoughts about how to segment the space.
All right. Well, let's start out just talking about what Baird is. We've been in operation since 2014. We're an urban air mobility platform. We are asset light, which means we do not own or operate or maintain any aircraft. We enter into very integrated relationships with operators. So we're not a marketplace. And it's not something like a ride-sharing company where a pilot can kind of download an app and start flying for Baird. We have a very comprehensive consumer-to-cockpit technology platform. We do obviously a lot of diligence and have a head of safety and integrate our operators, in a very intense way to ensure that their systems work with ours. So they are actually able to focus on what they do best, which is flying, maintaining, training pilots, and operating their aircraft. And we take care of everything else. We're aggregating customers. We're taking economic risk. We are promoting our brand. All the aircraft have to be branded. We have non-competes with them for by-the-seat service. And we're able to optimize our use of aircraft based on demand, based on routes, and based on type of mission. And I think, one of the things, you'll see is that a portfolio approach is required. Our thesis is that, we're using helicopters today, but we really, between the technology, the brand, our consumer base, terminals, 12 of which we have right now in the United States and India, which are very important for aggregating consumers and getting them in the right seats, doing safety, security, health. All these items, these real world items, are really important in order to actually have a viable service. And so at some point there'll be an asset swap, which will probably start in 2023. At least, we have deals right now with Beta Technologies, Eve, Magna X, and Whisk. I think Magna X, which is really more of a retrofit of one of our amphibious caravan fleet, which will be electrified. You'll start seeing this shift, and you'll have a cohabitation phase of helicopters and what we call EVA, electric vertical aircraft, you maybe call eVTOL. But what's important here is that you have a lot of manufacturers making one type of aircraft. The aircraft that we use for say, to take you to the airport is different than the one that we'll use to move a human organ. You may or may not know our MediMobility division is the largest transporter of human organs for transplant operations in the Northeast. Different than the one that could take you to Boston or the end of Long Island or Nantucket. So you need that portfolio, and we'll need that portfolio when it's all EVA, and we're going to need it in the beginning when there'll be a hybrid of helicopters and EVA. So when I look at the market and I step back, I see the manufacturers, of which we have deals with Beta Technologies, Eve, Whisk, and Magna X. And then I see platforms like Baird and platforms like Elevate, which is now part of Joby. And I think that's the way the world seems to be turning out. Now, obviously, there are technology, enabling companies. There are companies like Whisper that are working on noise canceling technologies to make aircraft even quieter. So you'll see some of those companies as well, but it's evolving.
Maybe, Rob, if you can, right now you're operating a helicopter company, and eventually you plan to transition to eVTOL or EVA. Can you help us understand a little bit about your customer demographics as you see them today and as you see them evolving over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I would also say, it's very important to not forget amphibious seaplanes, which are actually a big part of our business. And amphibious seaplanes are interesting because they do land in city centers. As you know, a lot of, or outside city centers, a lot of cities are based around the water. So that is important in New York, will be important in Boston and other places, in Long Island. And those will be, as they are today, EVA, pre-EVA substitutes, you may want to call them, or they're definitely the precursor to EVA, is better said. And as you know, that a lot of the EVA are fixed wing in design, almost like Ospreys, or there can be more of a rotor design. So that's a big part. That's a big, part of it. to say the less, to say that, just to give you some sense of it. But in terms of, our demographics, we started as a very high priced product. So I think not unlike if you take a look at Tesla in the early days, you go on the highway for about a half an hour, and you saw one that were $150,000. The distance wasn't great, and now you're dealing with them. They got 500 miles, and I don't know, maybe they're $35,000 or 300 miles and $35,000, whatever it is. I believe the model, especially from our perspective, which we're very brand centric, of starting high, which we did in 2014, where we had an average checkout value of $1,100, moving down to $795, $595, and now we're flying people to the airport and shatter the Uber Black barrier of over $200 in New York City, flying people for $195 to the airport or $95 to the airport with an airport pass. Really, breaking, as I said, now even because of the shortage and COVID, even sometimes during rush hour, breaking Uber X pricing. And that's really reducing friction, which is at the end of the day what our job is, turning a 2-hour drive into a 5-minute flight at a cost-effective basis and on a shared basis. And that is, even New York alone, you have 28 million people going between the 3 major airports and Manhattan only, whether in either direction, not connecting, not going to Queens, not going to New Jersey. Huge market for us. And I think that we're very much focused on being number one in the number one markets, especially where there's a lot of existing infrastructure that we can build exclusive terminals on, which we think are absolutely critical to having a service like what we have. And servicing these really high friction markets. And then as EVA rolls out, you'll work into more tertiary markets. But as a general rule of thumb, we talk about it. If they'll allow you to build a vertiport wherever you're looking in whatever city, they probably don't need one. You really have to, the existing infrastructure, they're not going to be new vertiports in New York City for a bit of time. So we're very big believers that early EVA will be using existing infrastructure and be part of the air traffic control system, and will be coexisting with current aircraft.
That's interesting. On that front, could you talk about, you mentioned the 12 terminals, I think, so far. You just talk about the markets you're in, and I think you have a big presence mostly in the Northeast too, and maybe why there first is it because headquarters are here or the density? We'll talk about that a bit.
Sure. I mean, New York City is the largest rotorcraft market in the world in terms of revenue. It's bigger than São Paulo, bigger than, Rio, as people, kind of think about a lot. The Northeast corridor is probably the most valuable short distance corridor for aircraft, just even fixed wing. So it's just a fantastic market. It's, a little bit, if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere a little bit, but the value proposition is so obvious, concentration of people, existing infrastructure, friction when compared to, existing forms of transportation. It really is, terrific. And also the demographics to handle it at the start. So I think that, it's a great test bed for EVA, but a good business, for us today. And I think that's what's kind of interesting about Blade. We've been flying people since 2014. And at the end of the day, when you think about the Blade experience, learning about the brand, looking at the opportunities to fly, booking, getting into a lounge, assessing your luggage, health and safety, what we call stacking and safety on the tarmac, stacking in your aircraft and turning that aircraft around. The only difference in your experience with EVA is it's going to be quieter. It's still going to be a 5-minute flight. But what's going to happen is the local stakeholders, whether it be community groups and the legislator and the government, whether federal, local, or municipalities, will say, what, this is quiet, it's electric, it's safe, it's emission free. Let's think about building new infrastructure. I mean, the airports we land at, some of them are over 100 years old. Some of the heliports where we have exclusivity for by-the-seat service in terms of terminals, they are over 40 years old. They're not building the stuff so quickly. But once we can prove it with this new technology, I think that's when you're going to start seeing new infrastructure that'll enable new routes and really increase your total addressable market, dramatically. So we're kind of pragmatic in that. We're not the the guys that are saying, you know, we're going to land on top of buildings and you're going to click a button like a ride sharing company and you're going to jump in 5 minutes into an EVA alone and go for $40 wherever you want. That's not where this is going right away. This is really going to be evolutionary, not revolutionary.
You have a relatively new product that you're trying to expand in terms of its customer base. Can you talk a little bit about your marketing strategy? You have a bunch of partners, and what demographic are you working with currently?
I think what's great about the market, in fact, I should refine what I said to you about those 28 million people. Those 28 million people are only people who are taking taxis, private cars, rental cars, ride-sharing cars. So people are taking kind of super buses, public transportation. They're not included in that 28 million. So it's a great addressable market. And I think that, what we're seeing is, there are probably a lot of people that like to do it, and there's some people who need to do it, and there's some people who value their time, lots of different reasons. But when you start getting into this 95, 195 range, and you think about, ticket pricing, especially for people who are flying, either alone or in, pairs, it actually is, pretty affordable. Obviously, we'd like to drive the price down. I think one of the things that, is unique about us, when we take a look at a lot of the manufacturers' cost analysis, we think it's going to be more expensive. And we think our demographic, which is higher end to start, is the right place to be. But I think now when you start thinking about sub $200, sub $100 products, it's going to be available to pretty much anybody who's going to that next level above public transportation. So we think, we're not solving congestion on the ground. We are definitely helping cities become more competitive and really lean into City 2.0. I mean, if you really even think about India, where we fly between Pune, Shirdi, and Mumbai. Pune to, from Mumbai, you're talking about turning a 5-hour drive into a 30-minute flight. If you're a businessman and you want to visit 3 companies in one day, that's 3 days. We can actually help you do that in one day. So I think starting out on the top in terms of, demographics is the right way to do it, kind of whittle your way down, preserve that brand. You can talk about it, $150,000 Tesla, where we were kind of around the $50,000 Tesla and working our way down. In terms of marketing, Samsung's a big partner. They want to get in front of all our people. We flew 40,000 people in 2019 before the pandemic. We don't have numbers to give you right now, although before the pandemic, even airport alone, just New York was a 20,000 person run rate. So getting in front of these people who are kind of early adopters, willing to pay this kind of money, has been great for us. So everything from beverage brands to, technology brands like Samsung, where we use their tablets on check-in and such. There are a lot of brand act, and also even hotel properties. So we've had situations where we've had hotels that really had problems getting people, and what we would do is actually activate a route. We did this in Newport, Rhode Island, for a hotel that really wanted to get New Yorkers, and they backstopped the economics of the route, and we're able to get people to their property. So the marketing really supercharges your gross margins, and that allows us to not only make more money on a gross margin basis. We've been gross margin profitable since day one, but also allows us to to hopefully be more competitive, not more competitive. Well, yes, more competitive in terms of pricing of the existing alternatives, and we'll see how those prices go over time.
To the audience, you can use a system to ask questions, or you can just email me at bkalo@rwbaird.com. I want to go back to developing new terminals, and nothing specific. I know you're now a fully public company. Congratulations. So we want to be courteous and of the quiet period. But could you just talk about timeline for opening a terminal and kind of what's required in that process, and what's the longest lead time? Because I imagine others are out there trying to develop terminals right now too. So I think many investors think of it as a land grab, and so I don't know if you characterize that, but maybe just walk us through that process and some of the big tools that you guys have gotten good at.
Yeah, there are two strategies. I mean, the one that we've used to date is to work with, at least in the U.S., is to work with existing heliports and airports to build terminals, and that helps them in a number of ways because it brings volume to them, it brings fuel sales, it brings landing fees, and also, excuse me, it takes a lot of the work off them. As you can imagine, in aviation in general, a pilot calls in and says, "I'm landing." All the services that are provided are really expensive for some of these airports or heliports, and they don't know about they don't own the passenger mission. So if you walk into, say, an FBO and you said, I'm supposed to get a helicopter, they'll ask you a tail number. If it's there, they'll let you know, and if it's not, they won't. But if you actually have a terminal and you own the mission of that customer, and they come in, you can tell them when their aircraft is there. You can show them on a screen on their phone. You can look at their bags and make sure they're okay. And then also, what's even most important is you can handle recovery. Recovery being it's late for, because of air traffic control, there's a weather issue, there's a mechanical, and they feel really safe. So these terminals are absolutely critical. And because of our brand, because of our volume, heliports and airports have been very open to working with us. The next level for us right now is buying existing infrastructure. As you said, I can't talk about M&A right now, but that's definitely something that's going to only enhance our margins because, to give you an example, just flying to JFK from New York, 40% of our costs are landing fees. So you can think about the difference of owning some of this infrastructure. And I think, when I look at the numbers of some of the manufacturers of what they think these aircraft are going to cost to operate per hour, you really have to make sure you think about landing fees and also understand that electricity is not going to be running water. It's going to be electric fuel. So these airports and these heliports will be upcharging for electricity once this infrastructure is built. So we're also working with existing heliports to make sure that charging infrastructure and all the things they need for this transition to EVA is there on time. And then in terms of the new kind of EVA only terminals, vertiports, that's going to take time because we're going to have to prove it with existing infrastructure and then go to the local municipalities and all the stakeholders and say why we need it closer to where our customers are, not just on the water or just in some faraway place, make it more convenient and how it's really going to aid their economy, aid real estate, and really change the architecture of how cities work today.
You mentioned a couple of the EVA companies that you're working with currently, including Whisk. Can you talk about the bake-off process that you had, who you looked at, why you chose those companies, and how you see that market forming?
Sure. So, we have a chief technology officer that is responsible solely for the relationships and the selection of our EVA partners. And they all really, a lot of them have different strategies. So when we take a look at BETA, we love the fact that they're in Vermont and they know that operating in conditions in the winter in the Northeast is very different than saying operating in Los Angeles. They know what we deal with weather. They know what we deal with freezing rain. They also know, busy air traffic, corridors. But what we're really looking at is a ship that's right for specific missions. That's both in terms of, distance that it can travel, obviously, the cost, but also what is their path to certification, and also cost terms of acquisition, but also cost terms of operating costs and what their timeline is. Because at the end of the day, all these guys have to be heads down, focused on building these aircraft efficiently, quickly, having the amount of capital and ready, and having great relationships, with the FAA during the certification process. We were very impressed with BETA that, they had contracts with United Therapeutics, with UPS. So, United Therapeutics was is their medical partner. They have UPS and Amazon as their cargo partner, and Blade is their passenger partner. Very impressed with them. Whisk, we had a long-standing relationship with Boeing. So the power of Boeing and Kitty Hawk behind them, we find very interesting. I think long-term in terms of you think about autonomous, they're going to be critical players. Eve, the fact that they're today controlled by one of the existing OEMs, Embraer, is really, really important. Because if you think about some of these independent companies, it's really a CapEx-heavy R&D project that years ago would be inside of like a Northrop Grumman or a Boeing or an Airbus, pouring all that money in, putting their heads down, not worrying about public markets, and some work, some don't work, some are delayed. So actually having some that have the backing of a company like Embraer, both financially and then in terms of expertise, was very important. And then when you think about at Magna X, that's really, in a way, something that we see it's coming earlier, which is just taking an existing aircraft in terms of propulsion and aerodynamics and modifying it for quiet electric use, which will be obviously sooner on the timeline, but still give us a lot of the benefits of EVA maybe a year or two early, depending on who you're comparing them to.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to, well, actually, we have one from the audience, so let's get to this. So you have partnered with the likes of Eve and BAA for future EVA platforms. Were there any specific technologies and capabilities that attracted you to their products? I think you talked about it a bit, but maybe a little more in depth.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the benefits we have is, we understand the economics of what it takes to fly in terms of number of passengers. We understand the routes we have. We understand a lot of the costs that, they may not, and also the passenger experience. So to be able to have, say, with the Beta Technologies, platform, we've worked pretty closely with them in terms of, okay, what kind of baggage weight and dimensions do we really need for each person? What do we do? What is the rake of the seat? How many inches do we need between passengers so they're not touching shoulders and there's a little bit of a comfortable experience given your current, technical boundaries, dealing with physically challenged people. I mean, all weight, size, weight, size, height type issues. What about the pilot experience? So those are the kind of real world expertise that we bring, and also wingspan in terms of can we land on just one existing helipad or not, and do we have to take up two, and how's that going to impact landing fees. When I took a look early, you think about Volocopter, with one passenger early on. I know they're looking at bigger ones, and I think we're very excited that people are looking at more higher capacity aircraft because, frankly, I don't see the economics working, at least for us, with anything less than 4 passengers. The infrastructure is not out there. You're not optimizing your turn times. We're now down where we can turn an aircraft. We're probably down about 4 minutes or 5 minutes or so. We can get that down to 2 minutes, which means more flights during peak times. And so understanding that is very, very important, because if you have something where you have an aircraft that will require, because of their technologies, a turn time of 10 minutes, that may not work. Or, how much time between charges, how does it do in weather? All these different things, kind of go into the alchemy of selecting your partners.
Great. You talked about I think in your opening, the opening question about, it's not like Uber where you can just go get a driver on, any driver. Maybe could you talk about the market for pilots and how that's evolved since you've been operating?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the benefits, again, we're asset light. So we have this network of vetted and integrated operating partners who don't have to worry about marketing, don't have to worry about customer service. They don't get credit card declines or people yelling at them at their flights later, things like that. They just focus on what they do really well, and they appreciate that. So there have been instances of certain operators that have had pilot shortages, especially those who laid off people since COVID. And I think everybody was very surprised at the quick snapback, especially in the Northeast, in terms of the desire to travel and the need for mobility, especially what we see in the Northeast with what we call the kind of synthetic suburbs, or this kind of, hybrid remote at home work environment, where we're now on certain routes. And even just, I think we've said this before, so I'll say it again. In April, we flew 7 days a week to markets that were kind of, 70 to 90 miles more plus outside, because people were going back and forth. Did it 7 days a week. That used to be a weekend product. So what we've seen is kind of spreading out of demand that has been, really important. But again, this asset-light model has allowed us to flex into certain operators who have not had issues with pilots or kept flying during the pandemic, and lessen the other ones, giving them more opportunity to bring pilots online. So I think long term, I don't see a huge issue here, but clearly I think, as you've seen with some of the commercial airlines, ramping back up for some of the operators who may have been very aggressive in limiting their schedules in terms of their pilot usage or the number of pilots we have. It has been an issue for some, but luckily we have enough operators, to make sure that we can service our customers to the best of our abilities.
I have a two-parter here for you, going back to the EVA questions. First, how do you deal with the capacity coming down? And right now, you talked about the current platforms having 4 passengers. You currently have 6 in the helicopters you're using. And second, a lot of the EVA companies have talked about also becoming service providers. So how do you deal with that incoming competition or the different mode of transport going forward?
Well, I think that it's a 2-part question in terms of the capacity, right? It's we have to, you have the economics of having fewer passengers, which, as you can imagine, it's everything. That's your revenues. Every seat is the revenues. You one less seat, you can do the math yourself. I think 5 works perfectly fine. Below, 4 is a little bit of an edge case. Below 4 is probably not going to work for us. At least we haven't seen the numbers to make that, happen yet. And the second part of your question, just so I get it right.
So some of the EVA companies are talking about actually competing with you.
Yeah, so I think it seems to be moving really into kind of us and Joby in terms of, or not Joby, Elevate in terms of a platform, which was, Elevate was acquired by Joby. I think what I'm seeing is, at the end of the day, one of the things that's great about Blade is when you look at our economic model and from our public filings, our forecast and the fact that we have historical revenues and run a business today, we don't have to go build something, make it fly, do it on time, get it certified, have it be economic, and then launch a service on top of that. So when I take a look at that risk profile, that's nothing I can do. We are not smart enough to do that. We want to pick one thing and do it right. And that is every other part of the ecosystem in terms of getting you to where you need to be in a seamless manner, cost effective, and as fast as possible. So I think I'm seeing a lot more openness from the manufacturers in terms of saying, we got to focus on our knitting. Not unlike in aviation beforehand, before EVA. A lot of people, you can imagine, and American Airlines, United Airlines probably doesn't want to compete with an Airbus or a Boeing. You don't want to compete with your suppliers, and we're not interested in competing with, being in a situation where our suppliers are competing with us. So I think that could be an issue, going forward. So we've seen, luckily, a lot of companies, which we frankly feel really strongly about, probably have the best chance of success just because they're not boiling the ocean. They're not trying to build an aircraft, certify it, go public, build a service, build a brand, get customers. That's a lot of work. We're just not that good. All right, we got to focus on what we're good at, which is getting that trust, building this brand. And luckily, we're moving existing flyers who've flown in 3 dimensions for 6 or 7 years to new type of aircraft, as opposed to trying to get some on the ground saying, take a look at this. We want you to get inside and fly in 3 dimensions, and this is going to be new. So I think I feel like we've mitigated a lot of the risk issues from our perspective. And again, the ability to focus is something we're relieved. At the same time, we're relieved that these guys are real innovators and, real forward thinkers and are able to really bet on themselves and put significant capital work to get these aircraft in the air. It's kind of like an Operation Warp Speed for EVA. It's a lot of capital coming into it, and I'm just glad that we're going to be in a position to hopefully work with some of these winners.
Great. We have a question from the audience that's similar to what we had coming up next. What role do you think autonomy plays for the overall industry and then for Blade in particular?
So I have kind of mixed feelings about this. Having spent 6 years trying to convince people to get into helicopters with pilots, I'm not prepared to do that right now to get people into aircraft that are EVA without pilots just right now, or where you have even something where the pilot is on the ground controlling it, and you get this optic from a marketing perspective where the pilot would prefer to be on the ground while you're in the air, managing it remotely. But at the end of the day, I mean, actually, if you think about Blue Origin and the autonomy that was there, I think that actually was something that I got a lot of questions from investors and people we work with, brand partners, and even employees. It's coming. There's no question. I question right now how much, and it helps in the economics besides giving you an extra seat. Clearly, I think long term, in terms of safety and being able to get more aircraft into the air, it's going to be important. But this is not a 0 to 4 year type situation that we need to focus on.
Can you talk about, you kind of address it right now, but what are the biggest hangups that people have to potentially using your service? Have you done any surveys? I mean, is it the cost? Is it just getting in a helicopter? And just by the way, Ben has volunteered to be the first customer, and I guess it's autonomous.
Autonomous EVA.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our partners are Whisk. We can probably arrange that with them. So when they're ready, we'll give you a call, Ben. I think it's going to be. Look, it is tough for a lot of people to wrap their arms around. But at the end of the day, that technology. If you think about just current, in aviation, obviously, pilot error is a big, part of things. So even if you think about autonomy in terms of a virtual pilot, second pilot, a virtual, additional pilot that is looking at things that you may not be looking at. It doesn't have to be binary where there's no pilot on board. If we can reduce the risk factor of pilot error, that's, a very big deal. In terms of consumer hangups, there's, no question that despite the fact that, we're looking at, between 100 and 150,000 hours of flight time between incidents for Part 135 operations, which is what we operate under. And, we next to commercial aircraft, this is, really one of the safest forms of transportation, clearly more than cars, clearly more than a lot of things. But, there is that optic of helicopters. Are they safe? And a lot of what we do is education. Most people don't realize that the kind of helicopters we fly auto-rotate. So I've been in helicopters, you can turn off the engine and you can fly for 7 miles and land on a dollar bill. You don't need a lot of runway. They don't, that idea is not really there. A lot of people don't think a second pilot is for redundancy when it's are they going to have an aneurysm? It's really more to handle navigation. Or second engine is in case the first engine fails. A lot of that is really, also because of lift. How much weight can you carry? So we try to talk about the technology and educate our flyers. I think really one of the biggest issues right now is we need more landing zones, right? It has to be convenient to you. So at the end of the day, and part of the reason why we started, we're not here as a publicly traded company with a multi-billion-dollar market cap. We wanted to price ourselves right, and for the potential growth, despite the TAMs that you see out there, this becomes a $5 billion market instead of a $500 trillion market. We have so much opportunity, but it's about additional landing zones. So if I can land across the street from you, George, that's a much better value prop than saying go get in a car and go 15 minutes to a Blade vertiport. So that's where we see the TAM. That's where we see, and that's really, I don't want to call it a hang up, but I'd call it a friction point in terms of whether someone wants to say, hey, is it really worth it for me to go do this? And then you need depth of schedule, which we're going to have, and you need trust. And I think these other pieces we have now, once EVA comes, convincing those stakeholders to have more convenient vertiports is going to be the biggest thing to get people over the leap, saying, this is a form of transportation I'm going to use.
How much is software the backbone of it, or is it how much should we think of that as an emphasis for you, and maybe describe how you use it?
Sure. So we like to say we have a consumer to cockpit technology stack. It's really important because I would say a lot of the operators we use, and everyone that are out there right now, have been focused more on the, again, flying, maintaining, operating aircraft. You can't do this on a whiteboard at the hangar. So we have an operator dashboard that connects with the logistics platform where our operators are working 24/7 to make sure that we're getting the right aircraft for the mission in terms of how where it's located, so we can minimize the amount of time the aircraft is in the air without passengers if it's coming from base, things like that. And also even to an in-cockpit tablet that talks about that gives information in terms of passenger manifest names and weight, because weight and balance is important today. It's going to be important tomorrow. Before Blade, you'd have to lock that manifest maybe 2 or 3 hours beforehand. We can have that happen maybe 15 minutes before a flight, 10 minutes before a flight. So a pilot can come in and pick up passengers, look at the weight, and decide how much fuel to take on. The same thing is going to be important in terms of, EVA, because obviously, the amount of weight you carry is going to have an impact on your mission length and your charging times. So I think that all that technology is not only kind of supercharged the ability for the operator to handle more missions for us, but also has helped the pilots do better turn times and understand fueling, and then ultimately impacting safety by understanding who and what they're carrying.
You mentioned landing zones as sort of the key that picks the lock a little bit here. So what is the biggest hang up in terms of procuring more? Is it noise right now that gets people in the way? I'm sort of curious as to how much.
At the end of the day, the number one issue we have is noise. And and when you think about something like Beta, that is quiet when it's in overflight, which is frankly where most noise complaints come, actually near silent in overflight and quiet on takeoff and landing, that's phenomenal for us, because at the end of the day, it's noise, safety, and emissions. And that is largely solved with EVA. But again, it's a little bit of a show me situation. I think we can't talk about it and build it. We have to use the existing infrastructure, use Blade's infrastructure, get our flyers in the air with this new technology, and show how terrific it is. And then we'll have an opportunity to make more of these convenient landing zones.
Just maybe just in the last minute here, dovetailing on that question, how much of an obstacle is the lack of infrastructure near your clients, and is it more related to the noise front? To build new infrastructure, I guess, what obstacles are out there for
well, yeah, I think what we're doing is path of least resistance, where we look at existing infrastructure and we see how, okay, here's point A, here's point B with, a heliport or an airport. What can this service? Is there a big enough addressable market? Is it saving enough time versus getting in a car? What are the traffic patterns like? How many people moving back and forth? Is it a bilateral loop in terms of people going to someplace and back someplace, both directions, so you're reducing the number of empty legs that you have? That's the way we go about it today. In the future, what we want to say is, here's the friction point, and now let's build the vertiports, as opposed to here are the vertiports, and let's see if this works for a new service. And that's why for the next couple of years, you're going to see Blade really just laser focused on these big markets. You're never going to see a chart from us with a map of the world in 200 dots. This is a product that works in 13 markets, 20 markets the way it is. And then over time, it's going to expand, because it's just going to be more and more convenient.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for participating. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.